Good afternoon. You're watching Businessworld Live here on One News. I'm Jes Delos Santos. We kick off our broadcast with the economy growing faster than expected in the third quarter. Gross domestic product came in at 7.1%, much higher than what economists predicted. A Business World poll of 18 analysts earlier yielded a median GDP forecast of 4.7%. Most sectors, including retail and manufacturing, improved, while government and household spending rebounded. The year-to-date GDP stands at 4.9%, and NEDA Secretary Carl Chua says the country is now on track to hit or even exceed the government's full-year target of 4 to 5%. However, the July to September GDP print was lower than the revised growth of 12% recorded in the second quarter. That's because Metro Manila was placed under strict mobility curbs in August due to the Delta-driven surge in COVID-19 cases. Now, bad weather in September also played a part with typhoons damaging crops. Economic managers note that the third quarter growth is a sign that the country is headed towards the right direction and could see a possible downgrade to alert level 1, at least in the metro, by the onset of the new year. Okay, that better than expected third quarter GDP print sent local shares zooming past 7,400. The PSEi stretches its rally for a 6-day, adding 0.6% on Tuesday to cap off the session at 7,441. This is the main indice's highest close since February of 2020, right before lockdowns were introduced in the Philippines. The PSEi finds itself as the best performing benchmark in the region so far this month, with a 5% increase. Now, taking a look at one individual stock here, you have Jollibee knocking it out of the park today. The only stock in the bellwether surging past 4%. That's after it managed to turn things around in the third quarter, returning to profit with a net income of 1.6 billion pesos, beating analyst estimates as well. But that's not the only thing going for the giant B. You have Bloomberg reporting that the food operator is studying to make a bid to purchase Chinese healthy food and bakery chain Wagas. Now, sources say, though, that might be up against Yum China Holdings and Restaurant Brands International. Let's see if Wagas can potentially find forever with Jollibee. But at least for today, investors finding joy with Jollibee. The stock is up 4.5% to 259 pesos and 80 centavos a piece. Now, out of the main index, we go to check on Petron. A day after San Miguel head honcho Ramon Ang said he's open to selling Petron back to the government, we get a picture of how the oil refiner performed in the first 9 months of the year, and it's looking good for Petron here. You have a net income at 4.99 billion pesos from a net loss of 12.6 billion pesos in the same period last year. Revenue also coming in higher by 35% to 291.6 billion pesos. That's at consolidated sales is at 59.2 million barrels for the January to September period. That's a little change really from 59.5 million barrels last year. Retail station volume is also up by 9%. Now, according to President Ramon Ang, they continue to prioritize volume recovery through programs that will not only help them generate more volumes, but will also reward loyal customers. Again, we have to put into context that revenue rose as international oil prices also rallied, with Dubai crude breaching $75 a barrel. But still, you have Petron ending the day in the negative territory here, down 1.6% to 3 pesos and 77 centavos a share. Now, again, we circle back to our top story with July to September growth figures exceeding expectations. Can we finally say that the worst of the pandemic is finally behind us? To get his thoughts on that, we have June Neri, Chief Economist of BPI. Good afternoon, June.
Good afternoon, Jess. Welcome.
Okay.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, thank you for joining us. Well, you predicted for the third quarter the GDP would be at 5.6%. What do you think that you miss here, and what surprised you the most?
Yeah, actually, we were looking at something higher than 6% before the print. But when we saw the unemployment numbers, we had to revise it a little lower, only to be farther from the actual figure. So I guess what we missed is the unexpected resurgence of the construction sector, together with the non or the low contact services component. Industry also did pretty well, including mining.
Mhm. Okay, now also comparing it at least quarter and quarter, it was a slowdown due, of course, to lockdowns induced by the Delta variant. But with curbs eased, should we at least expect a better growth in the last quarter of the year?
Yes, that's. I mean, the fourth quarter is something we can really look forward to, Jess. I mean, what more can we see from an economy that went through high inflation,
Mhm.
uh, to, very severe or very intense community quarantine, aside from, as you explained earlier, uncooperative weather. No? So if it hadn't been for these three elements, that 7.1 could have easily reached 10%. No?
Mhm.
And because last year we contracted by 11, practically wiping out the losses of third quarter 2020. So there is much optimism to look forward to, Jess. We just need to be careful that no new variant enters our territories,
Mhm.
that our healthcare system is resilient enough in case there is going to be another surge early next year. And of course, we have to be watchful of the weather. Last year, we got we hit pretty bad by the flooding in Metro Manila and other parts of the country.
Now, again, 7.1% in the third quarter. How does that change your overall model or projection for full year? How within reach is that lowered full year target by the government?
Oh, we only need to grow by 0.8% year on year in the fourth quarter to attain the 4% lower end, Jess. So it looks like it's well within reach, as we had commented even before the data came out. Now we're quite confident that it will fall within the target. And as we agree with Secretary Carl that we may actually even exceed the 5% upper end of their new projection.
Mhm. Now, you
And
also
yeah,
have,
it's
go
very
ahead, sir.
helpful that we did all of this improvement in the vaccinations, Jess. In the second quarter, we were only averaging around 80,000 um, vaccines per day. The
Mhm.
third quarter, we reached 400,000 average per day. And the latest in November is that we're almost 600,000 per day, hitting 1 million vaccinations per day. So it really shows you the big difference, no? The vaccination makes for economies that want to recover.
Mhm. Now, also, what's interesting to note about earlier in the day, you have a NEDA, Secretary Carl Kendrick Chua, saying he is expecting pre-pandemic growth even as early as the first quarter of next year. Is that a tad bit too optimistic, or is it highly possible?
If the momentum continues, because if we no longer declare an ECQ, yes, and growth and the reopening is continuous and sustained, if we reopen schools, no, children consume a lot, and they are the ones who fill up these retail areas. Uh, we think that this is a possibility, no? Although our own projection is it will probably be earliest in the third quarter of next year.
Okay, return to pre-pandemic growth at least the earliest for you at least is by the third quarter of next year. Now, my next question here before we let you go, June, can we finally say that we're out of the woods now?
Not completely. Again, as I warned earlier, we need to uh, watch closely this weakest link of the economy. It's proven to be the weakest link, which is our healthcare system. No? I don't think there has been any ramp up in our capacity in the healthcare system. Uh, this past 6 months, it's really been more about the vaccinations, lowering the infection rates and the death rates. No? If we see a new variant, a more recent variant other than Delta, then there is the risk that we could slow down or lose our recovery momentum. But otherwise, assuming the weather remains good, assuming the elections are the campaign is done in an orderly fashion, then we can expect a very strong growth rate next year of about 7.5%. Yes.
All right, we're still catching up, but things already improving at least. But there are still some areas there that we need to keep an eye on. Thank you very much for your insights this afternoon. Again, BPI Chief Economist June Neri. Thank you, June.
Welcome.
Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. The Trade Department says consumers don't need to worry about price increases this holiday season as price growth in manufactured products has been minimal. In a virtual press briefing, Secretary Mon Lopez says prices of some grocery items have only increased by around 3% despite the nearing holidays. Lopez said the DTI will promote products whose prices have been stable, including food consumed during the traditional Christmas Eve dinner known as the Noche Buena. He says some manufacturers of ham, queso de bola, fruit cocktail, pasta, and sauces have announced that they will not have price increases. The Philippine Amalgamated Supermarkets Association has earlier estimated that Noche Buena items may experience price hikes of between 4% to 8%, equivalent to between 25 centavos to 2 pesos. Now, the Transportation Department said it has identified more than 136,000 jeepney drivers who will be eligible for the 1 billion peso worth cash assistance to help them deal with rising fuel prices. The eligible jeepney drivers from the majority of the 178,000 PUV drivers estimated by the DBCC. However, LTFRB Chairman Martin Delgra had yet to respond to a request for comment regarding the eligibility criteria for subsidy recipients. For Transport Group Manibela, the 1 billion peso assistance is not enough as they estimate that there are at least 500,000 registered PUV drivers across the nation. President Marvel Buena tells Radio 5's Pailon that the Transportation Department should also clarify the distribution process for the ayuda and whether it will be handed directly to drivers or to operators. Meanwhile, Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte has withdrawn her re-election bid and will be replaced in the mayoral race by her brother, Vice Mayor Baste Duterte. Baste has previously withdrawn his candidacy for Davao City Mayor. Vice Mayor, rather, Sara has repeatedly turned down calls for her to run for the country's top post in the 2022 elections. Political parties may file for substitution at the COMELEC until November 15. And those are the biggest stories of this trading day, November 9, 2021. Catch Business World live again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jes Delos Santos and we are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.